6 days ago, 4 astronauts flew to the moon, and what they saw up there, nobody fully expected. Not the scientists on the ground, not the mission controllers in Houston, not the people who spent years planning every single minute of this flight. Because when you send human eyes to the moon for the first time in over 50 years, you get something no robot, no camera, no satellite can give you. You get human perception, human description, human emotion responding to a world that almost no one alive has ever seen up close. And on April 6, 2026, the 6th day of the Artemis II mission, the crew of the Orion spacecraft named Integrity flew within 4,000 miles of the lunar surface and spent 7 straight hours observing the moon in ways that stunned the scientists listening from Earth. I'm going to take you through exactly what happened, what they saw, what shocked the scientists, what moved the crew to tears, and what it actually means for everything that comes next. This is all real, all verified, all confirmed by NASA, by the scientists in mission control, and by the astronauts themselves, speaking live from space. Not a single thing in this video is made up. Let's go. First, let me set the scene so you understand the scale of what happened on April 6. The Artemis II crew, Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, had been in space for 5 days. They left Earth orbit, fired the engine toward the moon, and spent 3 days drifting through deep space farther and farther from home, watching Earth shrink behind them. At 12:37 in the morning, on April 6th, their spacecraft crossed a threshold that no human had crossed in over 50 years. They entered the lunar sphere of influence, the point in space where the moon's gravity is pulling on you harder than Earth's. Christina Koch was awake when it happened. She radioed down to Earth and said, "We are now falling to the moon rather than rising away from Earth. It is an amazing milestone." From that moment on, everything accelerated. The moon grew in their windows. The craters got sharper. The surface got real in a way it never is when you look at it from 250,000 miles away. And then the 7-hour lunar observation period began. The first thing that shocked everyone was the color. We have been looking at the moon our entire lives. Every photograph, every image from every space probe, every image your phone pulls up when you search the moon. Gray. The moon is gray. That is just what it looks like. That is not what the Artemis II crew saw. From 4,000 miles away, with human eyes trained on the surface in direct sunlight and in shadow, the crew started reporting something that sent the lunar science team into a frenzy of excitement. The moon has color, shades of brown, hints of blue. Variations in tone across different regions that reveal things about the mineral composition of the surface and the age of geological features that photographs simply cannot capture the way human vision can. Victor Glover looked at the terminator, the boundary line between the lit and dark side of the moon, and tried to describe what he was seeing. He said, "I wish I had more time to just sit here and describe what I'm seeing. The terminator right now is just fantastic. It is the most rugged I've seen it from a lighting perspective." The lunar science lead, Dr. Kelsey Young, responded from Houston. "That was an amazing picture you just painted. Those types of observations are things that humans are uniquely able to contribute." Christina Koch looked at the bright craters on the surface and told the science team, "What it really looks like is like a lampshade with tiny pinprick holes and the light shining through. They are so bright compared to the rest of the moon." The science team in Houston, people who have studied the moon for their entire careers, were reacting with visible excitement to crew reports they were hearing in real time, because no photograph had ever communicated what a trained human observer right there, in the moment, at that distance, could communicate in plain words. The crew also improvised. To help pick out subtle color differences on the surface, they took a t-shirt, stretched it across one of the capsule windows as a shroud to block excess light, and used it as a kind of shade to make the colors pop more clearly. That is not in any mission plan. That is 4 highly trained humans in space, doing exactly what human presence makes possible. Adapting, improvising, solving problems in real time. Then came something that even the scientists were not sure would happen. During the eclipse phase of the flyby, when the moon was blocking the sun from the crew's view, the astronauts were watching the darkened lunar surface. And one by one they started seeing flashes, brief, bright, quick flashes of light on the dark side of the moon. Those flashes are meteoroid impacts, space rocks, some of them smaller than a grain of sand, some the size of a pebble, hitting the lunar surface at many thousands of miles per hour with enough force and energy to produce a visible flash of light. The science team had hoped the crew might catch a few. They did not know how visible they would actually be, or how many the crew might realistically spot during a 1-hour observation window in low light conditions. The crew reported 6 of them, 6 confirmed meteoroid impact flashes on the lunar surface, observed by human eyes, documented in real time, with scientists on the ground immediately cross-referencing with amateur astronomers they had stationed around the world to watch the moon simultaneously from Earth. Science officer Kelsey Young's response when Reed Wiseman radioed in the first confirmed impacts was just 2 words: incredible news. Apollo astronauts in the 1960s and 70s saw a handful of these impacts from lunar orbit, but that was decades ago, with different instruments, different training, and far less sophisticated observation protocols. The Artemis II crew spotted 6 in under an hour, from 4,000 miles out, during an eclipse, in conditions nobody had fully modeled. Scientists are now studying those images to determine the exact times and locations of the impacts. The data will directly inform our understanding of how frequently the lunar surface is being hit by space debris. Critical information for anyone planning to build a base there. Then came the moment that nobody in mission control was fully prepared for emotionally. As the spacecraft approached the far side of the moon, the side that permanently faces away from Earth, Commander Reed Wiseman and the crew asked Mission Control for permission to do something. They wanted to name 2 craters, 2 small, bright, freshly carved craters on the lunar surface that no human had ever named because no human had ever clearly seen them before. They suggested the name Integrity, after their spacecraft, and they suggested the name Carol, after Wiseman's wife, who died of cancer in 2020. Mission Control went quiet. When Jeremy Hansen put in the formal request, Wiseman wept. All 4 astronauts embraced each other in the cramped space of the Orion capsule, tears on their faces, hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth, naming something on the surface of the moon, after a woman who was no longer alive to see it. In Mission Control in Houston, a moment of silence was observed. That is not a planned science objective. That is not in any mission document. That is what happens when you send human beings to space instead of robots. That is what a machine cannot do and never will be able to do. Then came the blackout. At 6:44 in the evening, Eastern Time, the Orion spacecraft passed behind the moon. Radio signals cannot travel through solid rock. The moon itself blocked every frequency of communication between the crew and Earth. For 40 minutes, there was silence. 40 minutes of complete communications blackout, among the longest in all of human spaceflight history. 4 people on the far side of the moon, more isolated from the rest of humanity than anyone had ever been, farther from Earth than any human being since 1972. What did they do during those 40 minutes? They gathered together. Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen had brought maple cream cookies for exactly this moment. The 4 of them ate cookies, floated in the capsule, and watched Earth set behind the lunar horizon. An Earth set, just like a sunset, but it is your entire home planet, disappearing behind the edge of the moon. And then, as they emerged from behind the moon and the Deep Space Network reacquired their signal and communications came back, they saw Earthrise, the Earth rising over the lunar horizon, the whole planet, blue and white and impossibly vivid against the black of space. Apollo 8 astronaut Bill Anders captured the most famous photograph in history during a similar moment in 1968, the Earthrise photo that changed how humanity saw itself. The Artemis II crew experienced the same thing. Live, in person, with their own eyes. But the moon was not finished with them yet. As the blackout ended and the spacecraft continued its arc around the lunar far side, the moon, the sun, and the Orion spacecraft aligned. A total solar eclipse. From deep space. Now, on Earth, a total solar eclipse lasts a few minutes at most. The moon is just barely large enough to cover the sun from our perspective, and the alignment passes quickly, but the Artemis II crew was much closer to the moon than we are. From their position, the moon appeared far larger in the sky, and when it covered the sun, totality lasted nearly 54 minutes. 54 minutes of total solar eclipse. Watched from the window of a spacecraft 252,000 miles from Earth. As the moon blocked the sun, the solar corona appeared, the outermost atmosphere of the sun, normally invisible because the sun's surface is so much brighter. The crew saw structures in the corona they described as streamers, delicate wispy formations reaching out from the sun's edge that scientists call coronal streamers, and almost never get to observe this clearly. Victor Glover looked at it and said, "We just went sci-fi. It just looks unreal." They could also see stars that are normally invisible when you are looking toward the sun. They could see planets, Venus, bright and sharp to the left of the darkened moon, Mars further out, Saturn visible. The crew photographed all of it in real time, transmitting data back to Earth as fast as the Deep Space Communication Network could carry it. The lead scientist on the ground summed up the day in her final message to the crew before they began the journey home. She told them, "I cannot say enough how much science we have already learned and how much inspiration you have provided. You really brought the moon closer for us today, and we cannot say thank you enough." Reed Wiseman's response, "You all knocked it out of the park. Thank you for giving us this opportunity." The Artemis II crew took approximately 10,000 photographs during the 7-hour flyby. 10,000. Scientists on Earth are still going through them. The images are still being downlinked from the spacecraft as the crew heads home. What they found is already reshaping scientific understanding of the lunar surface. The color observations will inform models of mineral composition. The meteoroid impact data will be used to improve safety assessments for the future moon base. The corona photographs taken during the eclipse provide some of the clearest views of the sun's outer atmosphere ever captured from deep space. The geological observations of ancient impact basins, lava flows, and surface fractures will be studied for years. And all of that came from 7 hours of 4 human beings pressing their faces against spacecraft windows and describing in their own words what they were seeing. No robot has ever done that. No robot will ever do that the same way. This crew is now heading home. They splashed down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego on April 10th, 3 days from now. The re-entry will be the fastest crewed re-entry ever attempted, coming in at roughly 25,000 miles per hour. But before any of that, before the splash and the helicopters and the medical checks and the press conferences, there is one more day and a half of them just being out there, farther from Earth than anyone alive has ever been, heading home. What they saw on April 6th was not just unexpected, it was a reminder of something this generation had almost forgotten. Space does not give up its secrets to cameras and computers alone. Sometimes you have to send people. Stay curious, stay watching.